Welcome to this recorded professional development about universal design for learning in early childhood settings. I'm Alicia Drelick,
And I'm Lindsay Hastings.
and this is a presentation from the LRC-South, a partnership with the Office of Special Education, the Division for Educational Services. The LRC, or the Learning Resource Center, is part of a network which provides supports throughout New Jersey. It's a partnership with the NJDOE, the Office of Special Education. The LRC seeks to foster the achievement of all students with disabilities, their families, and the educational professionals who work with them as they pursue the goal of increasing opportunities and improving educational outcomes in special education. The Learning Resource Center provides support for individuals in the area who support students with disabilities, including pre-service teachers, as well as content area specialists. We also provide services such as our production center, our research library, and consult services. We also continue to provide ongoing professional development, such as this presentation. For more information on all of the LRC locations, you can visit a link or contact the coordinator based on your location. We're joining you from the LRC South at Rowan University. We are housed in James Hall, and our production center is in room 1128. Today, we will be talking about universal design for learning and why this is a good fit in early childhood education. After a brief introduction, we will go over the principles of universal design, including multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. In our closure, we'll discuss a challenge for you to embark on with your classroom staff to apply universal design for learning in your setting. Before we get started, let's briefly discuss some of the norms of this presentation, as well as our online conversation. It's expected that we all use strength-based language and demonstrate a growth mindset when we're talking about both our students, ourselves, and other faculty members. We want to be ensure that we're engaged in solution-oriented discussions and come to conversations with an open mind. Please be sure to reflect on what is shared and seek clarification or ask questions if you need support. Finally, try your best to stay focused, engage in active listening, and ensure that all voices are heard so that we can have a meaningful conversation. The specific goals and objectives for this presentation are for you to become familiar with universal design for learning and figure out ways to apply that in early childhood education. We would like you to be able to identify specific practices that can provide multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. Finally, we'll have you set a goal to provide learning opportunities to apply UDL in your classroom. So first, what is universal design for learning? Universal design for learning is a framework that can be used to design environments, learning experiences, or lesson plans that promote meaningful access by anticipating a wide range of needs and characteristics in the beginning of planning. So we'll look through this framework and figure out how you can use this in your classroom environment and in your planning. First, let's talk a bit about inclusive preschools and the difference between traditional special education placements versus more inclusive settings. So when we're thinking about specific special education services, in order to gain access to these services, this requires evaluations, which often take place before students enter school. Special ed services are individualized, and they provide services after a need is well recognized. They focus specifically on overcoming a disability or building in supports to counteract a difference that we're seeing. And they really see differences as abnormalities. When we think about inclusive education and differences in an inclusive mindset, we can begin to think about building in plans and supports for all learners in the beginning of our instruction. This is a proactive approach that allows us to focus on meeting the needs of all students, and it sees and embraces differences as part of the natural diversity of the classroom. By applying universal design for learning in early childhood education, we're able to serve students from a diverse background, whether that's ethnically, linguistically, economically, racially, or gender-based. We want to ensure that young children have a variety of different supports to support them physically, cognitively, as well as through communication supports. By providing multiple means for engagement, we can ensure that we are increasing access and participation in learning activities. Since preschool is often the first learning experience in a school setting, we want to ensure that we are building these supports out so that students can engage in a meaningful learning experience. Finally, we know that many children do not have access to special education evaluations prior to entering the school system. Through universal design, we can build in and provide some of these supports without waiting for a child to experience barriers to their learning. Universal design for learning framework is organized into 3 principles. These principles are mapped out in order to link with brain research. So we will look at 3 principles for engagement, representation, and action and expression. Within each of these principles, you will find 3 guidelines that provide more information about how to enact this principle. Within each guideline, you will find multiple checkpoints, which allow you to hone in on specific actionable items that you can implement into your teaching. If you click on this image, it will take you to a PDF of this document for you to print out, as well as this being linked into the worksheet section on the website for this professional development. Let's dive into our first principle, providing multiple means of engagement. This is focused on building learners' motivations by providing choices on how they engage and at what level they engage with a learning topic. It really focuses on building engagement over longer periods of time. In order to provide multiple means of engagement, we want to ensure that we're providing options to recruit student interest, build sustaining effort and persistence, and provide options for self-regulation. Let's take a look at a specific checkpoint within this guideline. So for checkpoint 7.3, we want to ensure that we're minimizing threats and distractions for students. For this guiding question, we ask ourselves, how can we support young learners to concentrate on learning rather than their basic needs, such as avoiding threats and negative experiences?
So for example, if you're reflecting on your classroom now and what you hope for in the future, does your current classroom environment offer options for sensory stimulation, different ways to engage with their senses? Are you and other educators alerting children, especially young children who aren't yet walking and moving places on their own? Are you alerting them before you're physically moving them? Like, for example, for a young toddler, let's go change your diaper in the bathroom before you pick them up and take them. Does your classroom include a structure for predictable activities and transitions? Is there a structure to the child's day so that they know what to expect and don't feel threatened or distracted by what's happening and what might come next, as well as offering alerts and previews when new changes are about to happen?
Let's look at checkpoint 9.2, facilitating personal coping skills and strategies. For this checkpoint, we asked ourselves, how can we support young learners to manage their emotions in regulation to their learning?
For example, are we explicitly teaching, modeling, and providing feedback on managing frustration, developmentally appropriately, of course, seeking external emotional support? How can I ask for help? developing age-appropriate internal controls and coping skills, as well as handling subject-specific phobias and judgments of classifications that some people still see as natural. For example, I don't like to paint, or dolls are for girls. How are we helping them manage those judgments and phobias?
Let's move on to the next principle, to provide multiple means of representation. In this principle, we're addressing the what students are learning. It focuses on providing information, and we want to ensure that teachers are able to introduce concepts in a variety of formats that make sense to children. For this, we want to ensure that we're providing options for perception, language and symbols, and comprehension. Let's dive into some of the checkpoints. For checkpoint 1.2, we want to ensure that we're offering alternatives for auditory information. Our guiding question is, how can we support students to better understand information when they are listening?
For example, when we're presenting information or giving directions auditorily, are we also offering text equivalents in the form of pictures, cues, symbols? Are we using gestures, signs, and cues? We could also use sound or music to increase auditory access to those directions and routine, and using visual analogs to represent emphasis and prosody. For example, emoticons, symbols, and images.
For our next checkpoint, we'll look at checkpoint 2.4, which is promoting an understanding across languages. This guiding question focuses on how we support the learning of emerging bilingual children.
So when considering our emergent bilinguals, are we presenting information and giving directions that identify target vocabulary and link it to child-friendly definitions and pronunciation in both English and other additional languages spoken at home? For example, are we helping them identify what they should pay closer attention to in terms of language? And are we embedding visual non-linguistic supports for vocabulary clarification, signs, pictures, videos? A lot of the checkpoint that we just discussed about providing alternatives to auditory and text equivalents also apply here.
Moving on to our third and final principle, providing multiple means for action and expression. This focuses on the how of learning. This really refers to creating opportunities for children to show what they know in various ways. It helps us get an accurate pictures of what students are grasping and what they might need some more support on. This principle is most linked to assessment. In order to provide multiple means for action and expression, we want to make sure that we are providing options for physical action, expression and communication, and supporting executive functioning skills. Let's take a look at checkpoint 4.1. Vary the methods of response and navigation. For this, we have a guiding question about how we can provide flexibility in the ways that students physically respond to material.
For example, when we're designing activities, do we provide alternatives for rate, timing, speed, and a range of motor action required to interact with the instructional materials, manipulatives, and technologies? Are we also providing options for how students can physically respond to or indicate their selections? And for example, instead of responding verbally? And are we providing options for physically interacting with the materials, including sensory interactions and fine motor development? Okay, now it's your challenge. For example, to start, I want you to go ahead and identify 3 universal design for learning practices that you're already using in your classroom. Then I want you to use the checkpoints, specifically the ones we highlighted in today's presentation, in each of the guidelines to set yourself a goal to implement 1 new UDL practice with your classroom team. And then also we encourage you to attend our virtual session to discuss your progress in implementing UDL practice in your classroom.
When you're getting started, remember that UDL is not a basic checklist. You are not seeking to check off every box within the checklist. You are reflecting on these practices and your student needs and making changes based on those needs. For example, you might want to focus on transitions or providing visuals because you see that specific need within your classroom. One of the most effective ways to implement universal design is using the +1 strategy. And this is introducing one new strategy to your team or in your classroom at a time so that you can really see the effects of that implementation. Be sure to talk about what is working and what is challenging with your classroom staff so that you can get to the root of making the best and most successful environment for your learners. Some key takeaways for today is that universal design for learning is a framework that can be used to plan learning activities or increase the accessibility of your environment for all learners. Implementing small changes at a time can help create a more inclusive learning environment for all of your students. Thank you for joining us today. Links and resources with this session are provided for informational purposes only. You can stay connected with us by accessing the QR code below, or you can follow us on social media. We look forward to seeing you at the virtual session. Please stay connected with us.